kind of imagine it.
We just want to make a part of those two. The additional okay.
Now you've got me.
It seemed like there was more. But didn't we have a second one review committee? And that was special time?
There was, the first one review committee was May 26th.
Well, that was the first one?
Right. 21st was then the second review committee.
June 28th.
June 28th was the actual growth fund committee.
And July 6th. So they've actually discussed it first. That's the point of asking.
Good evening and welcome to Jobs Development Authority for Monday, July 19th. Welcome and roll call.
Weigel.
Here.
Doppler. Here. Weber.
Here.
Mock. Here. Kavami.
Here.
Sandy.
Here.
Bean.
Here.
Mayor Buczynski.
Here.
Have a quorum.
Thank you. Item 2, JDA action items. 3.1, probably 2.1. Accelerate loan program modification, convertible note policies.
Thank you, Chairman Mock. As you can see on your agenda, even though the numbering is a little off, we do have 2 items dealing with the Accelerate Loan Program. We have John Gaster from First Eye is not in attendance, but he's joining via Zoom. And I do want to take this opportunity to thank him and the other fine people at First Eye for their assistance and patience and graciousness, because their company has really kind of been the guinea pig as we have refined our new Accelerate Loan Program, both in our procedures and the program parameters, kind of in tandem with them. So I really want to acknowledge how very helpful and patient they've been in this process. And so it is really difficult for me to kind of separate the discussion about First Eye from the discussion about the actual program itself. As you may recall, when this group last met on July 6th, you agreed to modify the program to allow the option of including a convertible note as well as a conventional note. And your staff report includes the verbiage that was added to the program description that says, kind of as all things, the JDA has ultimate discretion, but the typical discount rate will be 20%, and it is the option of convertible note or conventional note, again, at the JDA's request. So when this was discussed in tandem with the First Eye application review, there was a lot of discussion about how this convertible note should be managed. But when this was last discussed at Growth Fund Committee's last meeting on July 12th, the only further refinement that they recommended was adding, as your staff report notes, a minimum 10% owner equity requirement, which is not really related to the convertible note so much as just an overall program amendment. In terms of that affecting First Eye, it really doesn't, because they have met that requirement already. And this is not really a due diligence item, because this will be shown on the initial application. So nobody who cannot meet that 10% requirement will even come before the Growth Fund Committee or the JDA. So the recommendation for the first action item would be, again, hold the public hearing and then amend the program description to include that 10% owner equity requirement.
Let's open the public hearing. Seeing no one, let's close the public hearing. Any comments or questions from the JDA?
Nope, I'll move approval.
We have a motion
Second?
and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item 3.2, accelerate loan request, First I LLC.
So now to actually put what we've just done into practice, we do have the request from First I. They were introduced to this group very shortly after the program was adopted, so this has been looked at in one form or another since May, so there has been a lot of due diligence applied to these people, and as I mentioned, they've been very helpful and patient as we've used them to learn how to really refine this program. So again, the request is to approve their $250,000 loan using a convertible note at a 20% discount. They have already met that 10% equity requirement that you just added to the program description. And as I said, they've been before this committee and the Growth Fund Committee numerous times, so I don't really want to belabor the process, but we do have Keith from the EDC who has, been representing them throughout the process, and as I mentioned, John Gaster is available via Zoom if you have any questions. But they are a tech firm. They have been very well received by Growth Fund Committee members throughout their many appearances there in terms of their business plan and their preparedness. So the recommendation is to approve the loan.
Thank you. Let's open the public hearing. Seeing no one, let's close the public hearing. Comments or questions? Mr. Sandy?
Ms. Richards, I'm sorry, I'm not 100% familiar with all of the requirements of the loan. Is there what are the hooks that we're putting in on these to have these businesses locate some of their employees, hopefully the majority here in our community?
Well, we don't have loan documents yet, so that will be one of the burdens that we place on Mr. Gosted to create those, but I guess I don't have a rock-solid verbiage to convey to you, but it obviously is the intention that they stay. There are no personal guarantees, so in terms of a clawback, if it is, we recognize a high-risk loan. I guess the risk of them not staying in Grand Forks was not the risk that we were worried about, more the risk that these are startups that would not be able to repay more than startups that would do well and leave.
Yeah, I'm familiar, and I understand, yeah, I just, I think that making sure, Mr. Gosted, making sure that if they decide that they're leaving our community because of brighter skies somewhere else, that they would pay us back.
Well,
Seems logical, right?
we could certainly include a
Unless we don't want to,
provision.
for all we know, they're going to be great and we'll want to keep them.
Well,
convert to
and we could certainly include a provision that the note is due and payable if they move their operations out of Grand Forks County.
Sure.
And I don't know if you've already kind of got that in your back pocket, Mr. Gosted, but it certainly seems like a reasonable term to include.
I do now.
Yeah, thank you. I'll move approval.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Weigel. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Let's see here. Item 3.3, authorized public sale for Corporate Center 2 at 402 Demers.
I would defer to Mr. Gosted on this. Thank you.
Thanks. Members of JDA, this was a recommendation I made because the JDA consists of all of the city council. I did a little bit of research, and there are some opinions and some legal analysis that suggests that the JDA can be deemed to be the alter ego of the city. And as you may be aware, there are ordinances in place that talk about selling property owned by the city of Grand Forks by a public auction, anything over $2,500 in value. And so based upon that research and the fact that I think there were some folks several parties that had shown some interest in buying, it seemed to me the best process would be to do this through a public auction. And the process is pretty simple, or relatively simple. We just have to notice it up in the paper for 2 consecutive weeks. The notice has to be 10 days before the sale. And the thought process would be that there'd be written bids submitted to begin with an oral bidding process after that time. There'd be some criteria that would make sure that we only have serious bidders that show up at the oral bidding process. And so that was my recommendation, is to allow that public auction process to work its way through. One of the questions that was posed was, what's the sale price going to be? And we're going to target it at the $3 million appraised value. But the process will also allow for the city or the JDA to reject any and all bids. So before anything gets approved or any sale gets agreed upon, we'd come back to the JDA and say this was the highest bid that we've received.
Any comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Sandy? Can I open the public hearing first? Okay. I'll open the public hearing. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Motion by Sandy.
I'll second it.
And a second. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Welcome, everybody. Grand Forks City Council meeting, Monday, July 19th, 2021. Roll call, please, Marie.
Weigel.
Here.
Doppler. Weber.
Here.
Mock. Vami.
Here.
Sandy.
Here.
And Bean. Here. We have quorum.
Thank you. 1.2, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 1.3, Mayor's announcements. I got out to the Hugo's Raceway on Tuesday, just after the ribbon cutting. Pretty exciting to see that parking lot completely filled there at the Alara Center. And Mr. Weigel shared the numbers of the weekend, qualifying event that they had. And on Friday, there was 115 riders, Saturday 150, and Sunday 178. And riders from the 3-state area. So we had riders from South Dakota, Minnesota, and North Dakota. And I'm sure when that border opens, we'll have some Winnipeg riders down as well. So that's great to see. I want to thank Governor Burgum for his visit last week. On Wednesday, we spent the whole day with the governor. We toured the LM Wind Power Plant. We were over with John Onken at the True North Impact Center, toured that as well, and then had a luncheon over at Choice Bank. So I want to thank LM, True North, and Choice for their hospitality. One of the main topics was workforce, and I think everyone can see that as you look around town to see all the help wanted signs out there. And a big part of that, I think that they're trying to do, and through the state legislators, that legislative action, putting money toward it, is the CTE centers, so your career and technical education centers, and that was a big part of the conversation. So we're working hard with the school district to have some proposals and some further conversations about that. And this is really, I guess I look at this as really kind of my type of ball game. I love this, the med techs, your mechanical technicians, your tradespeople, people that really work with their hands and the skilled labor, and it's an opportunity to get young people exposed to that. So something I'm really, really excited about, and hopefully we'll have further proposals to come forward. We had the North Dakota Joint Summer Water Meeting, so Al Grasser and Todd, thanks for presenting at that, and John Bernstrom for taking the tour. And as always, we have to thank Ken Veen for the various roles that he plays on policy in the water field, so thank you, sir. Kind of on that front, we're going to continue to monitor the hot, dry weather in the forecast and how it affects water usage. Thank the Lord for that wonderful rain today, and the rain going to the south of us. That'll help fill up the Red River and keep us flowing. But in the meantime, we are still asking the community. It's a recommendation. We appreciate if people can follow it, but it's certainly not mandated. 4 a.m. to 11 a.m. twice a week on the lawns. We did notice a big drop off after we instituted that, so that was great to see. And then finally, the ADC, the Association of Defense Communities, we got a team out there in DC right now supporting and telling the Grand Forks Air Force Base story. So thank the county. They got a few members there, and our own Spencer Halverson is also on the trip. I'd hoped to make it, but unfortunately we got a budget we got to work on today, so got to prioritize things sometimes. So thank you for the group that went out there. And that's all for mayor's announcements. 2, we've got awards, presentations, appointments, and proclamations.
2.1 is presentation of Griggs Award by Historic Preservation Commission.
All right, thank you. I'm going to read this, and then we got a certificate we're going to present to Pam Lafine, and then she's going to say a few words, but I want to read this first. The Alexander Griggs Award recognizes exceptional personal efforts to preserve Grand Forks' built and cultural history. It is named for Captain Alexander Griggs, our city's founding father. Honorees are selected by the Grand Forks Historic Preservation Commission, and recipients' names are added to the permanent plaque that hangs in council chambers. In the past years, the award has been given to historians, librarians, teachers, and public servants, among others. It is my privilege to announce that Lonnie Lafine is posthumously awarded this year's Griggs Award to honor his passion and efforts to maintain the historic character of our city. As an architect, Lonnie Lafine recognized the value of old buildings. He knew that they brought a character to the city that is impossible to replicate. They told the story of the city's residents and its history, and he recognized that they have a unique ability to bring people together. His work in historic preservation included service on the Grand Forks Historic Preservation Commission, the National Trust Historic Preservation, and the North Dakota Historic Preservation Review Board, which he served as the chair. It is my pleasure to present this certificate in recognition to Pam Lafine.
We're shaking.
I know you want to say if there is something for you, and you can.
You kind of alluded to most of this, Mayor. I first want to thank you. Lonnie would be so honored to receive this award because architecture was his soul and historic preservation was his heart. We moved back to Grand Forks in the mid-1980s at a time when many old buildings in the region were demolished to make way for more modern, efficient architecture. Like all of you, Lonnie knew that losing these buildings was the same as deleting a chapter out of history, so he made it his purpose to not just help save these places, but to tell their story to future generations. Through his firm, JLG Architects, Lonnie helped find new use for hundreds of historic spaces and even owned and developed 3 of these buildings when no one else would. I hope his work and all of the great work community leaders like you do every day will continue to inspire the next group of Lonnies to go on building these connections through time and generations. Thank you.
Thank you.
.2, presentation of 2022 mayor's budget.
Thank you. We've got a number of slides. I think I'm going to go through the first few, and then we're going to turn it over to Maureen. Are we planning on kind of going through the whole thing and then opening up for questions and comments? Is that?
That would be wonderful, yes.
Okay.
If you could hit the lights, ma'am.
Yeah. leave us in there. Thank you. We only had maybe a few changes from the original presentation earlier on the general fund, but this of course includes all funds. So if you want to start with the next slide. Thank you. We can, there we go.
There we go.
All right, as we look, obviously the budget has a jump from 178 million to 216 total. I believe of that number we had an increase of nearly that entire amount on capital. So you've got a lot in capital project enterprise funds as well as special revenue funds split up. Was it about 45 million total, an increase in our capital expenditures?
That's correct.
That's good. So that'll make up the bulk. The increase in the general fund was a small proportion to the amount of capital that's going in, which is why you see the big number in 2022. Next slide. Again, here just breaking down the total expenses and the capital outlay, and you have some of that as well, I believe, a part of maintenance and operations. So that gives you a pie of that breakdown. Next slide. And there's the salary plan. So market adjustments came in as the biggest part of that in catching everybody up on the 80%, as well as the minimum salary increase. So if people didn't have a raise at all, everyone at least got a minimum of $250. It doesn't seem like much, but it's a progression. And I think we're in a great shape. Last year we held things flat, almost flat completely, with just a 1,000 raise across the board. And we didn't know if we were going to be able to be where we're at this year, but we've not only played catch up, so not only are we catching up for last year, but this year's increase as well. So 3% is a big increase, but with inflation numbers the way they are and us wanting to stay competitive, I think we're going to have to continue to look at that and using the list that we have for the salary ranges and continue that. But it's a big priority. I always talk about public safety and infrastructure, but people is the most important investment, and paying competitive wages is the key to that. Next slide. All right, this just goes over what we're kind of proposing here for 2021 for the CARES funding, kind of finishing up the rest of the CARES funding and looking at the expenditures for ARPA. As ARPA, it's more tied to infrastructure types of projects, so we're able to, as we look at the wastewater infrastructure needs that were coming up, we're able to put a lot of money towards that, which is going to save on those increases over the next 6 years. So rather than having such a large 3.5% increase, we're closer to 2.5 for residential, which doesn't seem like much, but when you compound that over 6 years, it is a big chunk, and it's paid up front. And lastly, I think the great thing is to have this increase in the general fund and be able to pay people more without having to raise property taxes. So revenues have done well, building permits are doing well, sales tax is coming in well, and with that, we're going to be able to have a reduction in mills. Basically, we've taken the growth, but we haven't taken your revaluation. So let's say you had a house that was worth $200,000 and we revalued it now, it's worth $205,000. Essentially, we're not taking that $5,000 gap, but if the neighbor next to you had a lot and now they have a $200,000 house on it, we are taking that increment to property tax. So most people will see it, an average tax bill to be flat, and under the circumstances, having a cut last year and being flat this year, I think we're doing pretty good. And that just kind of goes over our priority, like I said, public safety infrastructure, but most importantly is the people. And we are making some technology improvements. We've seen troubles all across the country with pipelines and other things being hacked, and we're going to make sure we have a solid network here, and our IT team does a great job.
All right.
Next slide. There we go. With that, Maureen, it's on you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Mayor, President Sandy, and members of the City Council, and to all those listening here and from home. So tonight what I'll do is I'll present the Mayor's budget in a little more detail from what the Mayor just introduced to you, build upon what we previewed with you at that June 7th meeting, and then look forward to discussion as we move forward, move this budget forward. I did want to point out as I go through these summary slides, you do have detailed information that was emailed out in a budget binder. You also should have some handouts in front of you, as well as this presentation that I'll refer to as we go through this. So beginning with the salary plan was presented so well by Tangi in detail at that June 7th meeting, so I'm not going to go through all of this with you again today, but we do have those slides included for you. I'm just going to hit a couple changes that have taken place since that time. But then this slide here just shows you some of the things that the mayor pointed out as far as key components of that. As far as the general fund positions and promotions, as this was shared with you, but we have highlighted a couple of the changes that have taken place since that June meeting, one being equipment operator lead. We do have a promotion included, which affects the general fund for a position there, as well as we do now have an additional FTE budgeted within the police department for a crime analyst. Those numbers are included going forward. And then with your non-general fund positions, we do also have a promotion that affects those funds, and that's once again with the equipment operator lead position with that promotion. So like the mayor said, we do have a mill reduction figured that would reduce 0.88 mills. This is the amount equivalent to taking the dollar amount from growth and nothing from revaluation, holding property taxes flat on the average. The value of a mill, as you can see, is roughly $244,000, up from roughly $238,000 from a year ago. About 1.5% comes from growth. If you look at page 1 in your binder that was emailed out to you, and we can get you a paper copy if you don't have it in front of you, page 1 will show you a breakdown encompassing all property tax under the city's property tax umbrella and how that breaks out with that mill levy comparison. The mill reductions that make up that 0.88 mill reduction are coming from the general fund, public building fund, city special assessment fund, and slight amounts from insurance reserve, library, airport, and that's what we'll touch on as we go through this presentation tonight. In total, that would bring down the mill levy to 96.99 mills. So beginning with the general fund, this slide just gives you an overall picture of how the revenue shakes out, estimated at 42.8 million, or sorry, 42.9 million. Property taxes are based on 70.12 mills. Of that property tax bill goes toward the general fund. This does include a 0.2 reduction of mills into the general fund. We have state aid and sales tax dollars based on the 2020 actuals. Building permits we have figured in on a 5-year average. Franchise fees, we do have an increase built in for the franchise fees, primarily due to the electric franchise from data centers and including Core Scientific. And then we also do have a budgeted use of cash reserves as part of the solution to meet expenses, with $198,000 coming from our loan and stabilization fund and using roughly $207,000 of general fund cash between cash and department carryover. And then we are utilizing about $150,000, or we are utilizing $150,000 of the fire reserve that we haven't had to draw upon yet, and moving that into fire capital reserve. So an overall look at the general fund expenses is reflected on this slide here. When looking at the general fund expenses, we've broken this down for you in 2 different pie charts, one being by category and the other by function. So as you can see, wages and benefits encompass quite a large part of the general fund, with 80% of expenses goes toward wages and benefits. As the mayor had shown you earlier in an all-encompassing slide of all funds, that number is roughly 27% of total budget, but the general fund is primarily people. 53% of the general fund expense is public safety. We gave you a 2-year comparison here, as 2021 budget was really an anomaly, and it's better comparable to 2020. If I look at this on a 2-year time period, it would come to about 2.1% per year increase. We're funding the salary plan, as the mayor stated, fully funding the salary plan, as we hadn't been able to with the 2021 budget. This budget also includes increases in technology, builds back half of the education money that had been reduced, and also gets capital and capital reserve to healthier levels, as the mayor highlighted earlier, investing in the city. Mayor's priorities was to fully fund that salary plan. People are number one asset. Properly support public safety, funding capital reserves, and as you'll go through this budget, you'll see that we also include investments in needed infrastructure. So to review, included in here are some of the areas the general fund continues to support, including the CVIC. We have $215,000 in there. Social detox for our share of the expenses. We have the SROs, the school resource officers, 5 continue to be budgeted. That includes 1 SRO in each of the middle schools and high school. And we continue to do approximate 50-50 cost share with the schools on that. And we also continue the UND internship program, which has worked so well as getting funding up to an appropriate level for our public safety capital. Of course, we need to look at not just the annual budget, but look at a longer term for sustainability. As stated earlier, part of the funding solution here was to use some cash and cash reserves. As we do this, we want to look and make sure this is a sustainable budget. Over the 6th year, we're bringing in fire reserve over a 4-year period that basically brings in an amount annually needed to fund the fire capital reserve. So it's really a function of moving the dollars from operations to capital for fire. We're also bringing in some general fund department carryover and spending cash over the term. But as you can see toward the end of the projection, the gap between revenue and expense gets better as we wean ourselves off of that cash. And assumptions for this are listed on page 13 of your binder. But we do project to stay over that 18% policy minimum as we go forward. Some of the assumptions that's in here, we don't have increased FTE figured in our 6th year, and we do make an assumption of holding the mill levy the same. Of course, we'll continue to analyze that annually. So moving on to our special revenue funds, beginning with loan and stabilization, we use $198,000 of these funds to pull into the general fund. The PSAP, Center Public Safety Answering Point, we have the cost split between the listed entities on this slide, and that's based on a 5-year average calls for service. And your 911 fund is there for your capital infrastructure for 911. That's coming from the fee generated on your phone lines. The library is budgeted with a slight decrease in mills, allowing for the increase from growth, but once again, not taking from valuation increase, keeping property taxes flat. Library capital maintenance fund is sitting with a healthy cash balance, and they've invested well in their current facility, and it looks great. We do still have the Joe Neal bequest cash of roughly $710,000 that's sitting in its own cash account there, which has not been spent yet at this time. And your health grant fund is there to account for all their grant funds. Our street and water sales tax fund is Fund 2175. That was set up with the most recent half-cent sales tax for streets and water. This is estimated, we've budgeted this at equivalent with 2020 collections of $5.6 million, and we split that between the water, street capital project fund, and street operations. The revenue and corresponding transfers to appropriate funds are included as part of your 2022 budget. City Special Assessment Fund incorporates a portion of that proposed mill levy decrease with a 0.2 mill reduction coming from this fund. And of course, this fund just accounts for special assessments on city-owned property. The Prairie Dog Fund is our Fund 2178. We did receive an initial $2.5 million from Prairie Dog in 2020. The remaining, once projected $9.5 million, did not come to fruition as declining oil prices and didn't get past that large state SIF bucket that we needed to get to fill up before getting to any additional shares. As was reported in the last legislative session, the order of the buckets got changed. Now that bucket comes before the bucket for cities and counties that is where generated the 2.5 million. So what we have budgeted in here is no funding till 2025. I think that's conservative, but that's how it's projecting out currently. Community Development Fund is our Fund 2199. That does assume corporate center sale is finalized in 2021, with roughly 36% of the sale proceeds coming back to this fund for CDBG purposes. It's going to bring in a large amount of funds into here that can be used for purposes of helping with nonprofits, and we've budgeted large allocation available in 2022 and 2023, where it looks like a good fit for our human needs, area of needs. So we're using some of the remaining balance in this budget available from COVID relief as part of the budget to help fund police capital replacement costs and getting us on a good schedule for future replacement. We also have funds set aside with the purpose of future discussion with regard to strategic initiatives, workforce quality of life as we go forward. The most recent funds that, and we do project future receipts in the 22 timeline, are from the American Rescue Plan Act, which is referred to as ARPA. The last page of your handout B, if you want to take a look at that, that will give you a breakout of how we see or recommend using those funds, and that's been incorporated into the mayor's budget. We use the ARPA funds to support mental health matters for 3 years, with $100,000 included as part of the 2022 budget. The majority of ARPA funds are recommended to be used toward utility infrastructure, primarily with our wastewater, to help offset rate impacts, as the mayor stated. Funds are also included just based on discussion between department heads, staff members, city council members, the mayor. So we have dollars allocated toward physical building, security needs, cybersecurity, building ventilation, technology, dark fiber. So it's using the funds well, I think, to set us up good for the future. Although road infrastructure isn't a generally allowable use of ARPA funds, there is a component, as you can see in that handout, that to the amount of lost revenue, it opens up your ways that you can spend a little bit more. So we do bring in some money for our street infrastructure to help offset the lost revenue there from gas tax. We kept the sales tax allocation consistent with the previous budget year, and this is estimated to bring in about 1.9 million into our Fund 2163, or economic development. As stated earlier, we do bring in some of the remaining COVID money into here for strategic initiatives, workforce issues, quality of life. We also bring back $1 million reimbursement from what had been spent for SIG infrastructure. This fund continues to fund air-based retention, EDC, Art Safe Kids, special events beautification is all included in here. And as stated earlier, we do have dollars budgeted for mental health matters as we use ARPA dollars, and that is located within a police grant fund that we have a separate sub-department for that function. Public Building Fund is your Fund 2121. That's used to account for general funded buildings and capital maintenance needs. We have proposed a slight mill reduction here, 0.35 mils. That brings it down to 3.5 mils allocated for your public buildings. Listed on here are just some 2022 projects. As stated earlier, we have included ARPA funds for HVAC. This is in combination with, we have some ARPA funds for ventilation. We also have some dollars within our public building fund, so we can work those together to make some improvements there. And I'm not going to really talk to this. This just shows you the CIP and where all the different funding sources come from. Very, very busy, but just a good visual for you. So in total, the breakout, you can see the CIP breaks out with the largest share going toward utility infrastructure, followed by streets. Significant portion of the overall budget, as the mayor stated, and this can cause swings from one year to the next, just depending on timing of those large capital projects. So in looking at the Street Infrastructure Fund, which is your Fund 4815, funding sources here are sales tax, the highway user tax or the gas tax. Budget also incorporates those ARPA funds we spoke about, and $400,000 we bring in from our bridge reserve cash. Listed are some of the major street capital projects in 2022, but much more detail can be found in your detailed binder. And this map will just give you a little visual of, over the years, the areas of town that will be improved. We continue to include the CIP for a flood protection system, which is Fund 4154. The ongoing revenue stream for this fund is the use tax that currently generates approximately between $900,000 and $1 million annually. This is based on the 1 3/4% sales tax rate. Use tax is dedicated toward flood protection. To this point, it's gone to pay debt service for the flood protection system. The bond that this went to support matures in 2021. So 2022 is the first year that it will go directly into our flood protection system capital project fund for future expenditure. And listed there and in your CIP in your binder are some of the major projects they're looking at. The capital replacement fund is your 4,800. This is your capital replacement needs of the general fund. It's really used as a financing mechanism for general fund capital replacement. With the inclusion of the ARPA funds, we were able to bring on the police department on the same type of capital reserve schedule that had already been set up for engineering inspections, streets and fire. Also, we had taken a couple year pause on fully funding these schedules, and with the help of CARES and ARPA, we were really able to get back on track with our capital replacement needs. By doing this, it can really just take out budget fluctuations from one year to the next on when those large capital items, for instance, a large aerial fire truck come due. So you don't have those big swings in general fund budget. This is a nice consistent way for flow of finances. Moving on to enterprise funds, I've included, as in the past, just a summary slide for each of the enterprise funds, starting with sanitation. We've budgeted based on holding rates flat with the same revenue meeting expenditures, and we've listed there to the bottom left what those cash balances in the fund are. And then wastewater, which of course has had much discussion lately. We look to large capital improvements needs here. They've been incorporated into the annual budget in 6th year. We do, as referred to earlier, bring in some ARPA funds to help with the rate impacts of these large capital improvements that are needed. When we were here on June 7th, we showed you 3% rate increase for residential, 4.5% industrial, commercial. Now we're looking at, with the use of ARPA funds, 2% residential and 3.5%. So we were able to bring it down 1%. And we project no rate increase in water. As we do project revenue, we'll meet expenditure there. Healthy cash balances here as listed on the bottom left. The stormwater fund shows 4% rate increase is needed on stormwater and 2% on the greenway maintenance in order to meet expenses. Although this percent may seem high, it's on a smaller dollar amount, so it's less than $1 per month. And not much to say on mosquito fund. Everything looks good there. No rate increase is projected. So overall, in your estimated utility bill, this is based on an average 6,000 gallon a month user residential bill. All encompassing would be a 85 cents per month increase, or 0.87%. So we're trying to keep that very minimal for you. And a look to the public transit fund, revenues, expenditures, equivalent to keep that cash balance the same, and they also have $1 million set aside in their construction reserve cash. Dial-A-Ride, much the same, revenues meet expenditures, and they have, actually, they improved their cash position just slightly. I wanted to thank everyone that was able to make it to the joint meeting of the Alaris Center Commission and City Council. COVID's been a true test, I think, of this facility, and I think it has shown what a great community asset we all have here in the city that we enjoy. Inspector's done a great job of running things. We project basically for 2022 breaking even as we continue to phase out of this pandemic, and they've just done a great job supporting the community in this last year. We do have, besides the current capital and debt service, we're setting aside $1.5 million into the capital reserve. The Jda Fund Summary is listed here. A couple things to point out. The beginning cash balance does include all the cash balances that are listed toward the bottom left of this slide for the restricted uses as listed. Also, the beginning balance comes with the assumption of a corporate center sale in 2021, with the net amount after the transfers to CDBG would be $6.2 million to this fund. Also, we have the EDA grant for the tech accelerator, approximately $1 million, and also additional fit-up costs assumed. And we've also budgeted the annual allocation as was approved for the Nistler Business College, as well as the block fee loan, and also an allocation toward the high-risk loan portfolio. And then a snapshot of municipal parking fund. We've not included parking assessments in 2022 as we work through the new passport permitting parking system, and we'll reanalyze this again next year. But you can see we do spend down some cash here, bringing that beginning reserve cash from $275 down to $119. Really, to wrap up, some of the main highlights to end with, as this budget takes care of employees with funding that salary plan of 3.06%. We have reduced mills slightly in order to hold property taxes flat. We've tried to keep in check utility rates with very minimal increase. In total, on a medium household, your property tax bill is roughly $73 a month for services. We have utilized ARPA funds the best way we recommend to help impact of rate increases with large capital projects, as well as other areas that we highlighted. And basically, as the mayor stated, investing in the city's future for sustainability. The upcoming timeline includes a meeting on July 29th that has been set with the Wastewater Interconnect Advisory Committee. As you review the budget, we do eventually bring this forward for preliminary approval on August 2nd and final approval on September 7th. Once there is preliminary approval, just as a reminder, you can decrease, but you can't increase at that point. When we do have final or preliminary approval, we'll communicate that with the county, and they'll include with other local taxing entities a notification, estimated tax bill, and along with our public hearing dates and times. And we would be looking at our public hearing on September 7th. I do want to thank everybody for all their work through the budget, finance, all departments, mayor, council, with your thoughts, and I would open it up for more discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dorset, and I also want to give a big thanks, getting to be there, not every day, but getting to be at the, a lot of the meetings and seeing the work that goes in to prepare for those. Really appreciate all the work that your team does. With that, yeah, let's start it off. Anybody that has questions or comments, so we can start working through it. Who wants to be first? Yeah, President Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Dorstad, thank you, as always, for all of this information. I really appreciate it. I was anticipating getting our budget binders tonight. Are we getting them tonight?
Yes, you should have received it electronically on Friday, and I think Mike had said if you want a paper one on Monday to let him know. But he does have them, maybe if you want to, we'll get them to you.
Just put them in our mailbox
Yeah,
or something,
yeah,
would be great.
definitely.
Thank you, appreciate it. Can I ask a simple question, the social detox center?
Yes.
At some point, can we get a report as to what they're doing and how busy they are and what's going on? And I haven't heard anything about that in quite a while. Same with
Okay.
the public health and the needle exchange. I'd be interested in hearing how that's going and what they've been up to. The mayor, and Ms. Storrs said the Alaris Center's $11.4 million anticipated annual, or anticipated budget, surplus, or money that's set aside. What are we calling that fund these days?
The capital reserve?
The capital reserve. I thought you called it something else at our joint meeting, the 2029 fund or whatever we want to call it. There was some discussion at our joint meeting about the potential to improve our returns. Mayor, I know there was some discussion. Has there been any thoughts on what we could potentially do with that revenue?
Yeah, no, that's something we've had early discussions already with Mr. Gaste. We kind of pegged for probably August to work through. It's going to take an ordinance change, but we can certainly, basically the account is currently sitting in no-risk types of investments. You've got treasuries and other securities that are, and we're looking at a portfolio that might include, some slightly riskier things that can have the opportunity to bring a little better return. So I think we're going to bring that forth in August for an ordinance change, and then we can work through with some of our consultants on what a portfolio would look like.
Sure, so more to come. Great,
Yeah.
perfect, thank you. That's everything from me, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you again.
There's a lot of information that has been sent to you, and we can also get, just let Mike or I know if you want that paper binder copy, we can get you that as well. And if you find questions too after tonight, feel free to email me or give me a phone call too, and we can respond.
Yeah, certainly if you get, go through the binders, any questions, any concerns, obviously, let us know. We can work through those beyond this presentation.
I'd make one other comment, that it's all good news. Really, there's a lot of good news in this budget, and thanks for all the taxpayers locally and at the federal level that have been helping prop us up. Thank you.
Well, Grand Forks did a great job being resilient to this last year, and to still going out, operating, working, spending money in town, and it's really set us up to come out of this well. And the investments that the city made and the investments that developers and other people made in town really has us sitting in a good place, and we're able to continue to deliver services at a very high level, and through our enterprise funds and our special revenue funds to be able to do a lot of different things and provide a lot of service without increasing cost for the second year. So looking very good. Thank you, President Sandy. Mr. Vian.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was encouraged by the money this way that is going toward cybersecurity and what's going on there. I think that's critical as we go forth to make sure that we keep ourselves safe and not vulnerable. Now, I know there's probably more detail than we want to get into here and what we maybe want to be public about, but a great thing to be working on,
Yeah.
so appreciate that.
Yeah, we've tried to address not just the physical building security, but also the stuff you don't see, so cybersecurity.
And I would say I'd like to thank Councilmember Weber too on pressing us on getting the HVAC looked at, because part of the money that went to the HVACs in the buildings was part of that study. So we've, you talk about you doing these studies and not doing anything with them. And in this case, we were able to take it and find a balance to make those upgrades. And I can thank Mr. Baseflug as well from inspections for his work on that. So is Mr. Weber still on there to hear?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the shout out.
All right, any other questions or comments at this time? All right. Well, Ms. Mock seems to be,
We can email staff as they come up. as we're-
Yes, please email if you have questions after tonight, anytime really.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, if I may be direct, if you don't email, say you want a paper copy, you're not going to get one, so make sure you email marine, so we don't want to print a lot of paper if you don't want the paper, so to be direct.
We're saving money on paper. Thanks, Todd. All right, thank you, Ms. Storstad.
Thank you.
Moving on to 3 public hearings and second readings of ordinances.
Thanks. Public hearing and second reading of ordinance for final approval of a request to amend the zoning map, rezone B3 General Business District, Lot 6, 7, and 8, Block 59, Alexander and I's Addition, located at 702 North Washington Street.
All right, I'd like to open the public hearing for item 3.1. All right, public hearing period is closed. Open up for comment or questions from council. Motions?
Move approval.
Got a motion to approve from Mr. Weigel. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Kalami. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 3.1 carries.
3.2 is public hearing and second reading of ordinance for final approval of annexation of Lot 4, Block 4, Sunny Nodak Farms Addition, located in the 1100 block of North 62nd Street.
Thank you. Same procedure. I'll open up 3.2, public hearing period. Thank you. Public hearing period is closed. Questions, comments, motions from council? Motion to approve from Mr. Veen. A second.
Second.
Second from Ms. Dockler. Seeing no further comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 3.2 carries. All right, 4 action items. There was none in particular that administration needed to be pulled, but I know there was a couple that I think council was interested in having pulled. Mr. Sandy?
Mr. Mayor, 4-0, 410, 417, and 418, please.
Any other items that council wishes to have pulled and discussed? All right, with that, we will move on the consent agenda for 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, 4.9, 4.11, 4.12, 4.13, 4.14, 4.15. At this time, those will be the items. So can I get a motion to approve? Get a motion from Mr. Weigel? Second from Ms. Mock. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Those motions carry. Let's do, since we don't have it pulled, but it's introduction of an ordinance, let's pull 416. We get a motion to approve from Mr. Sandy. We get a second from Mr. Kavami. All those in favor of approving the introduction of the ordinance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 416 is approved. All right, we're on to 4.0.
4.0, preliminary reading and introduction of ordinance relating to prohibited animals and prohibition to fowl within Grand Forks city limits.
Did you get a chance to read? Would you like to, Mr. Sandy, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Contrary to popular opinion, I am not a chicken hater. I do like chicken wings. I like chicken breast as well. I do really appreciate Mr. Gosted's and his team's work on drafting the ordinance for discussion. I would like to amend the draft ordinance to change it to 150 feet from the property line for approval. I would like it to read 10 birds maximum, of which 4 are chickens. And I would also like to, because they have to get approval, because the permits are granted annually, I believe they should actually have to get approval of their neighbors annually as well. So I'll open that for discussion. I'm not going to make a motion, but that's what I would like to see. Unless there's significant pushback on that, I would make that motion, but I'll allow people to discuss that.
All right, let's, 1 second. Mr. Gossett, and I'll go to Ms. Dockler.
Discuss.
Yeah, just to clarify, President Sandy, the provision you talked about annually requiring permission, that's contemplated by the annual permit. When we put in language that they have to annually meet the requirements and limitations set forth in the, so it's already.
It's already baked.
already
It's
there.
in there.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yep.
Okay. Ms. Stockler?
President Sandy, do you mean 150 radius? So in all directions, 150?
Yes, 150 feet
So in
from
my
the
ward, that
property
would be multiple lots. We're talking, because our lots in the north end of town are typically much smaller than on the south end of town. So you're looking at multiple households that you're also including. So I feel like that would put even more pressure on those folks that are looking to get a chicken license on my end of town than it would on yours. So I would not be in favor of that amendment. And then I guess my question for you, Mr. Gosted, is how come 6? How is that number picked?
Councilmember Dockler, it came from public health. Was their recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay, would you like it to stick at the 60 feet, are you thinking, or would be a proper distance?
I would prefer to stay with what was originally written in there. I believe it's 70,
60 feet.
60 feet. I would be okay moving it to 70.
So I guess perhaps it actually makes more sense to geographically determine a distance, because 70 feet isn't enough for many of the lots on the south end of town.
Could we do it with the distance of width in the homeowner's lot plus 5 feet? Would that be enough to at least extend it to beyond your direct neighbor? But in that way, if you have smaller lots, you're only extending it to, essentially for 8 lots, whatever, plus maybe something across the street. Would that be acceptable? Would that be a way to get around?
It would be. The way it's drafted right now is we're looking at the exterior lot line. So if you've got 10 feet, then you're going to have to get everybody that's touching your lot line. If you're going to 60 feet, for example, and I know it's probably not the case down the south end, but if you've got 2 lots, each 25 feet in width, you're going to have to then go to not only the adjoining landowner with the 60 feet, but then into the next one as well.
Yeah, I suppose mine would cause a problem if you got a 1,000-foot lot in your next other thing, so
But
I strike that.
Not if you've got, if you're using the boundary of the lot where the chickens are being kept.
Yeah.
That's the starting point where you start counting the 60 feet. As long as you got 1 foot, I'm going into all the neighbors. It's how far out you want to go to potentially pick up a second neighbor.
Sure. So what I would like to see is 2 neighbors on each side and behind, for example, if you have adjoining property. Many of the properties in the south of Grand Forks have communal backyards where you could be, go to the corner, sure, you're 80 feet away, but you're 80 feet away from, and in my opinion, that you should have to get those people's permission.
Ms. Dockler?
So then, instead of however many feet, couldn't we just say adjacent?
I would say the 2 adjacent. I would, in my opinion, you should go 2 homes in all directions.
Mayor Baczynski, members
Mr.
of the
Bedard.
council, if I may, that 60-foot distance is one that I pulled up on a map, and I looked at how wide a street is. That 60-foot distance, and hopefully we'll get a map up here for you to look at, it would not incorporate the residences across the street from you, but it would go 2 on either side of you, as well as it would incorporate 5 people across the alley. So the one directly behind and 2 on either side.
And that's with a 50-foot lot line, is that?
This is in an area with 50-foot lot lines.
Yeah.
So that would, I believe, incorporate the 2 on either side that you're looking for, Mr. Sandy.
Not if you've got an 80-foot lot width.
Nope, this is for 50-foot lots.
So can you tell me the width of the lot of the people that have the permit down in Kings Walk?
He needs it to be 1 more foot than that, is what he's looking for. Oh.
But I'm certainly willing to compromise.
All right, well, he's pulling it up on the numbers. Are you, Mr. Sandy, you were looking at a maximum of 10?
I suggested a maximum of 10 with 4 of them being chickens.
So the max for chickens would be 4 at that point. Okay. Does anybody have consternation on that matter? Mr. Weigel?
So essentially, you could have, the way the ordinance is written now, you could have 6 chickens and another 9 pigeons or doves for a total of 15. But yet, we can only have 6 cats and dogs with no more than, I believe, 3 dogs and 3 cats. So to me, that almost doesn't make sense that you can have another 9 above what you can have for cats and dogs. So I would be okay with 6 total within all 3 categories.
I would find that acceptable as well.
Ms. Mock?
That seems restrictive to me. I think we're gonna, actually, I should back up. Mr. Bedard, have we seen more permits come in? And do we know how many chickens those permits have? currently?
We have had a couple more applications. I think a lot of the conversations have been around that 6 number, which is why we put that 6 number in the code. One new one has been approved. I'm thinking there's 2 waiting to be signed and reviewed, so.
And most of them have been around that 600?
Yeah, most of them, I don't have them in front of me, but they're generally 6 or less.
Okay. One comment that I had heard from someone is that when they ordered their chickens, they received an extra one, just in case something happened to the others. So I do think no matter what number we would do, which I think I'd be more inclined to do 6, but I think we should maybe have a guidance, or when people are applying for permits, we should provide some guidance that they should talk to suppliers. They might get more than that, because if I were ordering chickens, I would probably order 6 if the limit was 6. So, and then if you got 7, you'd already be exceeding that. So it might be a helpful thing to provide some guidance.
Mr. Kwame?
Can I just ask where the 6 chickens number came from?
It's a number. You could adjust it if you like.
It did seem that at least the people that had shown up at the last meeting were comfortable with that number. Felt it was a fair compromise from what small sample size.
I also think I mentioned it during one of the meetings when we pulled up the ordinance for other animals such as cats or dogs, that 6 was the number.
Mr. Sandy?
So here, I'll make a motion that we amend the current ordinance as drafted by city attorney to say 65 feet in any direction and a maximum of 6 total birds, all 6 can be chickens.
Okay, we've got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We got a second from Mr. Kwame. Any further discussion? Ms. Mock?
Do we have permits for other fowl in the city, or is it just chickens that you have so far? Like, do you have any permitted ducks or geese or chickens?
Not currently. Last year there were some quail.
Okay. And how many did they have for that?
They had around that 15 mark.
Okay.
Because quail eggs are about half the size of a chicken, so.
Okay. So do you see when people do a different type of fowl, like quail, do you tend to see more than 6? Like, is that typical?
If you were looking to have quail for their eggs, yeah, you would need about twice as many quail for the equivalency of eggs.
So can you repeat the motion?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So my motion is to move approval of the current ordinance with my amendments of 65 feet and 6 total birds, all 6 of which can be chickens.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any further comment? Yeah, Ms. Mock?
Would you, I don't have a problem with the motion. I do think that with some of the smaller fowl, at least from the conversations I've had, that some people prefer a different type of bird, and then if they are doing it for egg production, they of course want more. So would you entertain at least 12 with not to exceed 6 chickens?
Mr. Sandy? I think that was directed towards you.
Sure. Sure. If Mr. Kavami's willing to change his second, I will amend my motion to say 12 total, 6 chickens.
I think I was just hung up on the 6 chickens, so yeah, that's great. I'm good.
I think we'll allow that adjustment to the motion. So to be clear, the motion from Mr. Sandy is increasing that distance to 65 feet and up to 12 birds with a maximum of 6 of those birds being chicken. Does that get us there? All right. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
And that carries 6-1, I believe, with Weber dissent. 4.10. Thank you. Or no, 4, sorry. Where's the chicken one? 4.0. Perfect. Thank you.
All right, 4.10, proposals for project number 8327, recycling service.
All right. Mr. Sandy?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I am going to move approval of the staff recommendation. But I'd also like to, I'd like a little bit of clarification from Mr. Phelan. I want to confirm that you've said now a couple times, I think you've said that under our current permit for our landfill, we have to divert some amount of, and can you tell me what specifically, where is that in writing? Who did we commit that to?
Yeah.
To whom?
Mayor Buchanski and City Council President Sandy, it's in our current solid waste landfill. We do have we have 3 landfill permits. We have for our closed landfill, for our current solid waste, and then we have an inert landfill permit. So within our solid waste landfill permit, I would suspect probably in every solid waste landfill permit in the state of North Dakota, there's I'm going to say a goal. It's not a requirement, a goal to divert as much as possible from the landfill to include recyclables. And so our goal is 40%. I think if you totaled yard waste and branches and all the things we divert beyond just the recyclables, we're around, I think around 35%. So that's in our landfill permit. It is a goal. It's not a requirement.
Sure, but if we came in at 4%, can the state come back at us and say you're not doing your part?
Yeah, Mayor Buchanski and Council President Sandy, yes, I think we're renewing our permit currently, so generally every 5 years we renew our permit. And so I think the state of North Dakota finds that the city of Grand Forks serving this region is a really good actor and we do a great job. So I think they're our regulator and they can put any reasonable requirements on us.
If we became non-good actors, they could come down heavy. Okay.
Absolutely. And again, we're a state with maybe, what does the governor call a light touch on regulation? However, that's generally for good actors that are doing good faith things, so.
Sure. So again, I will move approval of extending, renegotiating, continuing, put together a new contract with Waste Management. I would, however, like to see us, based upon the comments that were made in the Herald as well as my discussion with Ms. Granovich, I think we should take a hard look at the city of Grand Forks collecting its own recyclables. I'd at least like to look at what our costs would be for that. Maybe not next month or even in the next 6 months, but I think it's something that we should take a hard look at and do the buy or build discussion and whether maybe we should bring that in-house at some point in the future. Thank you, Mr. Phelan. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We got a motion to approve 4.10. Can I get a second?
I was just going to second it.
Okay, we got a second from Mr. Veen. Any further comment, Ms. Mock?
Could we also look at grant opportunities for, I was hearing from people that there could be potential grant opportunities to look at containers or, so I think that would complement such a look. It seems a little 11th hour to do it right now, so I would support extending that contract, but I think if we could get a better service and there are grants out there, we should probably look at that and see what's.
I think that's a good idea, and I believe that with this contract, it's sort of a base, and we can increase to different levels of service, is that correct?
Yep, Mayor
If we were
Buczynski
to
and
get the
council
bids.
members. I think the beauty of what we're doing here is that it's going to be a new agreement. It's been a new proposal. We're actually going to pay less than we're paying currently, so who would have ever thought that? So I think it's a good deal. The other thing is that we're not changing the service level, so if we want to do something over the next 5 years, we have that ability, that we haven't sunk a lot of money into a new system, because if we went to a side load container with new containers that we had to pay ourselves, the contractor would suddenly say, well, you know, I need a 5-year run on this. So the beauty of what we're doing here is just keeping things pretty much the way we are now. And one of the reasons why we didn't move to what was discussed as an evergreen center is that we thought our drop sites that, you know, primarily are the 3 larger ones around town, are a lower cost alternative to that, but we can certainly look at an alternative strategy. And that's generally what they're describing, is then you'd have a subscription service for those that wanted it. So we did bid that. It came in at, you know, over $6 to $10, depending on what kind of service, and that was much more than the $4 to $5 people were willing to pay. So that's why we arrived at, let's just keep on doing what we're doing. And as Mr. Sandy said, we'll keep reviewing opportunities, whether they're grant or alternative service delivery.
Thank you, Mr. Field. Any further comment on item 4.10? All right, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. 4.10 carries unanimously. We got 417 and 418 left.
417, introduction of ordinance of preliminary approval of request to include the Beacon PUD Lot 2 Block Renewal Subdivision located at 710 First Avenue North.
Thank you. Ms. Edwardson, please.
Good evening. I'm going to do a quick introduction. Just to kick it off, the Beacon is here for its first run through in terms of the proposal of the project. We do have representatives from Epic Companies, Lance Johnson, and I believe Alan Gossard with EAPC is here. So Cheryl, if you could bring up their presentation, I'll have them come up and give you a brief background of the project, some high-level overviews, and then I'll step back up to describe the zoning piece of it.
Good evening. I'm Lance Johnson with Epic Companies out of West Fargo. We're very excited to bring the Beacon to Grand Forks, or propose to bring it to Grand Forks. I just want to give a quick 30,000 foot view of the project. I think we have a couple slides.
Let's see if they got that pulled up. Maybe it's on the...
That would have been my bad. I thought maybe Cheryl was running it from back here, but maybe I was supposed to do it up here.
Please let the minutes reflect it was Andrew's fault.
That's fine with me. That's fine. Because I fixed it right away. That's fine.
Okay, the Beacon is an area that'll have 3 buildings. Each building is 7 stories tall. We have 1 floor of commercial in each of the 3 buildings. The footprint is approximately 12,500 square feet in each building. Building 1, which would be kind of the northwest one, even though nothing downtown is perfectly north and south, would be the first building to be constructed. That would have 1 floor commercial and 6 stories of apartments, highlighted by the 2 top floors being 2-story apartments. Our second building will be the one on the east side, which will be 1 floor of commercial, 5 of apartments, and then 2 floors of condos, floors 6 and 7. The big highlight of the Beacon development is the publicly owned plaza in the center. It's about 40,000 square feet. Can host many different community events, concerts, ice skating in the winter, and kind of everything in between. We do have a few renderings of the building, and I kind of want Alan to maybe touch on the architectural features of those buildings.
Good evening, Alan Dossert from EAPC. We'll just talk quickly about the architectural amenities. Subterranean parking, and of course that is all cast-in-place concrete with 2 floors of precast construction above that, and the entire base of the building would be masonry, along with select materials of masonry coming up in the corners and creating pilasters, and a lot of glass on the first floor, because that being the commercial area. And then as we move up the building, it opens up to lighter materials until we get to the upper floors, and we have a lot more glass on the upper floors. We have a 2-story configuration of apartments on the upper floor, and we open a lot of that space up, so we get a really dynamic apartment on that 5th and 6th floor. But the materials are pretty standard, precast masonry sort of core structures exposed on the outside of the building, and then lighter materials like composite panels and metal panels, combination with glass infill around within the brick as we go up the building.
I think we have one more rendering that just kind of highlights the area. We had our initial meeting with the school district, the park district, the county, and city staff to start talking about the plaza, the design, the different amenities. So we kind of put this view in there just to kind of show the space and kind of to show how it would fit in between the buildings.
Well, thank you. Definitely a very beautiful building, beautiful add to downtown. Like a lot of people, everyone I'm talking to is extremely excited about this, and just wanted to say thanks to the EPIC team as we work through this development agreement. It's been, great to work with you guys, and we've enjoyed the process. So thank you.
So then real quickly, just for an update to council, I don't believe the development agreement has come back just yet, but this is, the zoning that's being requested tonight is just one element that'll be brought forward to council. There'll be a subsequent replat coming, as well as an adjustment to bring the property into the downtown parking assessment district. Then on top of that, and that kind of encompasses planning's role for items, the development agreement will be coming forward between, probably Mr. Phelan will bring that forward. So you'll see a few different things come forward for this project. Tonight, we're going to focus on the zoning. So with that, we are looking at the PUD, and we modeled that after the downtown design standards as closely as possible. However, the design standards would highlight in terms of siting that this entire site be surrounded by a building with the parking in the middle is how we've kind of outlined things, which is your traditional downtown urban form. That theory goes out the window when you place a public plaza in the middle of the development, but that's a great, wonderful use that we're excited to have downtown. So we decided to go the PUD route to accommodate that aspect of the development. So with that, the document follows most of the design standards except for that basic but still significant piece, the parking and the siting. We will, like I said, be bringing it forward into the downtown parking assessment district, which essentially grants more urban, denser parking requirements to the property. The other element to highlight is the signage being requested. They are requesting a Type 2 event center sign, which is the smaller sign allocated to both the Alaris Center and the Ralph. Alaris Center has a much larger billboard, kind of off I-29. Ralph has one larger one off of Gateway. Their smaller ones, Alaris is on South 42nd Street, and the Ralph's on Columbia, would be the equivalent size that this public plaza event center is asking for. We feel it's appropriate given the public plaza element, trying to draw attention to that environment, what's going on. The property has a unique characteristic in how it's laid out, given how First Avenue kind of curves around, and you see it briefly on Demers as you're coming over the overpass in between US Bank. So the signage makes sense to highlight this public element. So that is different than the downtown standards allow for. It would be unique to this PUD, so we just want to point it out here. And so with that, I could stand for any questions on the zoning.
Thank you. Council, any comments, questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, Mr. Webb, please.
Just for clarification, this is just the preliminary vote. We will be discussing this again in 2 weeks, possibly?
Not 2 weeks. It'll come back for final with the rest of the planning and zoning August 16th, I believe.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Great. Ms. Stockler.
As far as the apartments and the living spaces go, I just am wondering, what's the target demographic?
That's a question.
Maybe Mr. Johnson can answer that. Mr. Johnson.
Yes, thank you. Young professionals to college age. We do have mostly one bedroom, some two bedroom, and some one bedroom with an office with the shift of people working from home.
Are there going to be any income-based students within the development?
I don't believe so, but I'm sorry I can't answer. I can get that answer for you, though.
Mayor Bachensky, if maybe just because the development agreement was mentioned, we'd be on the same path if you approve this on the same path on August 16th for planning and zoning. The path of the development agreement that would include the management agreement would be on that same path for a final approval as part of a public hearing process too. So we're trying to get these aligned, and I think you'll see that with Mr. Gosted and myself as soon at the next COW meeting.
Thank you. Any further comments? Or we can, yep, Mr. Sandy?
So there was a significant amount of discussion about this item at planning and zoning. I don't know, the discussion went almost an hour, if I recall correctly, or maybe even a little longer than that. There was a fair amount of discussion related to the sign as well as the downtown design review standards. The path that the planning department took on this was to use a PUD because the discussion with Epic companies about the beacon started well before they updated the downtown design standards. And so with the interest of moving the project forward, the planning department, I think, implemented a good process for putting this into a PUD. I do, however, agree with Mr. Budke's sentiments and his concerns that we do just come up with some downtown design standards and then we throw them out the window when we start talking about a different development. And so I'm interested in other council members' thoughts related to whether we should be following the downtown design review standards, which are now put in place for anybody else that is going to do a project downtown, or if we should continue on the PUD path. I know that if we decide to throw all the work out the window, we are going to slow the process down for them, and I don't know what timelines Epic is working under here, but I can only imagine that haste makes waste, so, or that they need to be hasty, because otherwise, in this situation where we could slow them down and jeopardize funding sources or you name it. I am not personally in favor of the significant sign that they want to put. This one, I've been going back and forth on for a long time. Downtown, with the density we're having downtown, and I recognize that buyer beware, and if you move into one of those apartments and there's a big sign flashing all night, that you should know it, but I just don't like the concept of putting in a big electronic sign downtown when we don't allow anyone else to have it. So those are my opinions. I certainly want to move this forward. I'm really excited about this development for our community. I love the fact that the folks from Epic they believe in Grand Forks and believe in the future of Grand Forks. So, but of course, all of that is just my opinion. So I'm interested in knowing how other people feel.
Mr. Veen, please.
Well, I haven't put a lot of thought into this, Mr. Sandy, but I have a tendency to agree with you. You know, one of the things we wanted to do as you come over to the Demers Avenue Skyway, you hit downtown, and it's very important that that whole corridor as you go through downtown, I think, be consistent and be a good representative of downtown. I don't know if this is good or bad, to be honest with you, but I think we should pay special attention to the aesthetics of coming down off the overpass and going through the downtown area and making sure that it's consistent. And however we do that, I think makes sense.
Mr. Kavami.
Mr. Sandy brought up a good point about the electronic sign. I just think about the Empire had a similar proposal that was brought to planning and zoning maybe a couple years ago, that they were going to replace their sign with electronic sign, and it got shut down. And then it was just done. So that's just something to bring up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends what the sign looks like. I think it's pretty tasteful, the one with the lights. There's other aspects to consider. I know that at least in Fargo, the sign draws revenue, which is used to maintain the public space. So that's a big thing to think about. Also, we get calls all the time down in special events. Why didn't I know about this event, or I didn't know about that event? And we say, go to the special events website, it's there. Until that's flashing in someone's face, they don't know when there's an event coming. So as far as a way to draw people there and actually get usage out of this and tell people what's going on in the square, I think it's really beneficial. I think it would help to have, renderings if there's a, a way to show what it's going to look like as you come down the hill, because we're all picturing the big Caesar's Palace flashing lights, but I don't think that's what it's going to be. I don't think there's an issue on Columbia when people drive by, the Ingolstadt sign, they live right across the street from that. I don't have as big of an issue with it because there's other aspects, but maybe, is there a way to get some, at the next meeting, could we just maybe have a picture taken with it showing what it's going to look like to scale in a photo?
Yep, absolutely. And I just want to say that, West Fargo doesn't allow video billboards or video boards in town. So when we brought forward the entertainment district, we were allowed, and there was a lot of pushback on it. And that video board is 1,000 square feet. It's I think the largest one in North Dakota. At night, it does dim to 2%, which produces like 1/10 of the light that the street lights on Cheyenne Street in Fargo show. So I definitely get the Vegas feel and the big bright lights, but I think the technology has come to a place where it's really not as significant of a negative as it once maybe have been.
Can you point on there where the sign is going to be?
Right now, we're looking at using the current monument that was there that it used to have a digital reader board on it. It's the sign that's still there, the structure.
It's right down at the very bottom of it.
Yeah.
Got it. Right down the bottom.
And I think it was mentioned before, when you do drive by this, so with the US Bank building on the side, there's really not, at first we thought we'd try to do what we did in West Fargo here with 1,000 square feet, and it wouldn't fit. It doesn't fit right. And we just felt that this size of a sign would be appropriate, and that's why we're requesting its approval.
And what is the size of this one?
I think roughly 10 feet by 20 feet. So I think 225 feet is the maximum amount.
Okay.
It would be less than 30 feet tall. I think that's the other caveat.
Okay. All right, Ms. Mock?
You mentioned, I think, that in West Fargo you have one. Is there any way to capture how much that dims and what that looks like in West Fargo, just for a reference?
I can...
Is there reference photos or something that might make...
Yeah, in West Fargo, we did bring Daktronics to speak to the planning group, and it's funny because I had to come back a month after it was operational to talk about complaints, and there was one. So kitty corner from that sign, there is 2 homes that were currently both suing the city of West Fargo at the time, so we knew we expected that it would be a problem. So I brought it back, and one of the people on the planning and zoning in West Fargo said, I just got to say, I thought it was going to be this huge deterrent, and he said I was totally wrong. So, but I'd happily get some more information on sign and rendering of what it would look like.
Yeah, I think that'd be great, having some good renderings, and also if you have information on the revenue that it brought to help maintain the square, because I think that's a piece too that can be helpful. Any further comments at this time?
I'll move approval.
Motion to approve from Mr. Weigel. Do we have a second? Second from Mr. Veen. Any further comment? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
I believe we had a 6-1 with Sandy dissenting. That 4.17 carries.
4.18, introduction of ordinance preliminary approval of request to include North Congressional PUD Concept Development Plan Amendment Number 3 located in the 800 block of Thames Court.
All right, Mr. Brooks. Did anyone have any questions for Mr. Brooks on this one?
I just had one real quick question. Have they scheduled the public meeting?
Yeah, tomorrow night.
Neighbors? Great, that's how I move approval, Mayor.
Okay.
Sounds good. We have a motion to approve. We have a second. Second from Ms. Mock. Any further comment on this one? It seems like all the answers were the question was answered. All right, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 4.18 carries unanimously. 5 information items.
5.1 is the statement of changes in cash balance as of May 31st.
Thank you.
And 5.2, investment portfolio summary as of June 30th.
Thank you. Moving on to 6, citizen comments. We'll open up for any citizen comments tonight. Oh, here we go. Please, just if you could state your name and your address for us, if you don't mind. And
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm Sam Adams. I live at 3601 Linwood Circle. And I'm coming here to ask a question, I guess. So I attend a church here in town. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I have a volunteer assignment in one of the congregations here to help with to help coordinate missionary work, basically, and like getting the name of the church out. And when thinking about what I could do, I realized that I don't know of a lot of community projects and like volunteer work that we have here in this city. And so I came here today to try to ask, like, what are you guys doing, or like what kind of projects are you guys looking at? I heard during the discussion of the budget that there was a fund to set aside for like charity organizations, and so I wasn't sure exactly what you guys are doing, and what, you know, us as a church can do to support the local community projects here.
Oh, that's great. If you want to write down your email, I think that's the best way to get back, and email and phone number for us to get back in touch with you. And I don't know if any other council members want to add anything to that, or we can certainly follow up, and you know, I'm sure there's a list. If
sure.
It's not too often we get people coming to us wanting to do things for free, so appreciate that.
Well, yeah, I just, you know, I want to make sure that we're doing our part to support the community any way we can, especially coming out of this pandemic. You know, now that we're hoping, you know, that the vaccine continues to be useful, and that we can continue to do more outreach. Now that things are getting a little safer, you know, we're looking to really reach out to those in need. So
All right.
I appreciate you
Thank
guys.
thank you for coming and sitting through that tonight. Really appreciate that.
Mayor, we'll administratively follow up with this
Perfect.
gentleman and kind of do a scoping session and bring it back to city council maybe maybe within 2 weeks here.
Sounds great. Any other citizen comments tonight? All right, we're going to close the citizen comment period. On to 7, approval of minutes and bills.
7.1 vendor list as presented.
We have a motion to approve the vendor list. Got a motion from President Sandy. Do we have a second? Second from Ms. Dockler. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 7.1 is approved.
7.2 is the minutes from May 17th and June 7th.
Got a brave soul going to motion. Motion from Mr. Weigel, second from Mr. Kwame. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The minutes from May 17th and June 7th are approved. 8, city administrator comments.
Nothing this evening, thank you all.
Thank you. Number 9, mayor and council member comments. Start with Mr. Weigel.
No, thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Dockler.
No, thank you.
Mr. Weber.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Cavani. Mr. Veen. Vice President Mock. President Sandy.
Good initial budget discussion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, much appreciated. Well, I'll keep it moving tonight, and I don't have any comments other than hopefully we can get some more rain and help the crops up and help the crops out and fill the river up. With that, motion to adjourn. We got a motion from Sandy, second from Mr. Cavani. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.